Imagine living in a world where you can't do something as simple as take the train without inhaling some amount of drugs. Where businesses large and small just close or struggle to stay open due to staff and customers straight not feeling safe enough to come to the store. Where even in the event of a deadly and immediate emergency, help may be 10 or more minutes away if you're lucky. This is the world with a weak police force. It's also Seattle. Hi, I'm Garrett Van Beek. For 3 years now, I've been studying criminal justice at Whatcom Community College. Through my studies at WCC, I've had the unique opportunity to take criminal justice classes focused on topics such as community relations and targeted violence, many of which have required me to do extensive primary and secondary research in the field of criminal justice, including conducting surveys and interviews. I also have had the unique opportunity to participate in an internship with the Linden Police Department, where I spent 3 months going on ride-alongs, acting in training scenarios, and gaining first-hand experience of the importance of police in our society. And lastly, I've had the privilege of participating in the Whatcom County Sheriff's Office's Community Academy, a 12-week course that went over the many different functions that the police force fulfills. While it may seem unbelievable, the awful conditions that I've described are, or at least were, at one point true of Seattle, Washington. Shortly after the Defund the Police movement in 2020, the city of Seattle made attempts to, defund the police. According to an October 2022 article in Spectator, Seattle University's student newspaper, in 2020, the majority of the city council expressed a desire to defund the police department by 50%. While the actual budget cuts were well below the goal, at only about 17%, it still had a severe impact. Budget cuts combined with COVID-19 vaccine mandates and other factors resulted in many officers leaving the department. According to the Seattle Police Recruitment and Retention Plan, released in response to the staffing shortages by Mayor Bruce Harrell, the Seattle Police Department had lost 400 officers in just the 2.5 years. While the crisis certainly can't be attributed entirely to defunding the police, it does make Seattle the perfect example of what happens without police, and therefore an example of why a well-funded police department is vital to meet the various needs that they fulfill. The first major need that police fulfill, and arguably the most important, is the protection of public safety. The vast majority of the role of police is focused on public safety. Continuing to use the example of Seattle, in 2021, the time police took to respond to emergencies had reached an all-time high. According to the 2021 year-end crime report assembled by the Seattle Police Department, the average response time for Priority 1 calls was 10.5 minutes. This may seem relatively fast, but considering that Priority 1 calls are the most important and the most dangerous, usually involving immediate danger to lives, 10 minutes can be far too much. While this is important, the true sign of a weak police force's consequences can be seen in the Priority 2 and 3 response times. While Priority 1 average response times had stayed relatively the same within the past decade, Priority 2 and 3 response times had significantly increased from 2020 to 2021 and had more than doubled in the last decade. Additionally, in the 2022 year-end crime report, it was noted that there was, quote, no significant change in Priority 1 response time in 2022 compared to 2021, end quote. The second primary role of the police force is to enforce laws. Who would have thought? This can be considered a second role or just an extension of public safety. As we'll soon see, a lack of law enforcement results in greatly diminished public safety. In any case, as most know from common knowledge, a significant portion of police time and resources goes towards investigating, patrolling, and punishing criminals. In the city of Seattle, there are many crimes, illegal drug use and possession and shoplifting being the most famous and commonplace examples. In many locales, including Seattle's King County and even our own Whatcom County, there is just not enough jail space to house these criminals. And as a result, drug crimes and shoplifting go unpunished almost entirely. A Kiro 7 article on the subject "This is the worst I've seen. Seattle police continue to combat open-air drug use in downtown," and includes an interview with a Seattle police officer explaining this issue. This once again makes Seattle the perfect example of what happens when police are unable to meet the needs of society. As I mentioned in the introduction, many businesses have left or been forced to leave Seattle, as shoplifting and drug use has created an environment that's just not safe or profitable. In an article from My Northwest by Hannah Scott, she discusses how the streets are littered with garbage from open-air drug use. Businesses have been forced to hire private security or simply close. In 2021, the Downtown Seattle Association sent a letter to the Seattle City Council expressing the dire situation, specifically calling out violent crime, drug use, public safety, and a woefully staffed police force as contributing factors. The third major societal need that police fulfill is the providing of numerous services largely unrelated to crime. Tasks focused on emergency response, building community engagement, and public safety. A webpage by Walden University, 25 Ways Police Officers Serve Their Communities, lists many tasks that police forces are responsible for outside of their law enforcement duties. Conducting home checks, providing self-defense courses, directing traffic for municipal events and in the event of car accidents, and lots more. While not every jurisdiction is the same, it can't be said that police don't have a role outside of law enforcement. It's been well established that police are important in our society. The disaster in Seattle that consistently worsened and improved along with the strength of the police department perfectly demonstrates the police force's vital role in not just enforcing laws, but in providing public service and safety as well. This brings the question of how cities like Seattle can improve their situation. The general solution to the problem is simple and has already been recognized by the city of Seattle. A better funded and staffed police force is the only remedy to the issues that a poorly funded and staffed one creates. Once again, according to Mayor Harrell's police recruitment and retention plan, steps have been taken in Seattle to increase police funding, hire many more officers, and expedite the hiring process to strengthen the police force as fast as possible. Many would agree with this conclusion. However, there are also those who argue for the defunding of the police. According to a June 2021 article by Clark Chesterfield in The Journalist's Resource, the Defund the Police movement began in earnest following the infamous death of George Floyd in his encounter with Minneapolis police officers. The article also discusses two different objections to the funding of police that the movement of Defund the Police features. The first stance taken by the Black Lives Matter organization is relatively simple, that policing in America is fundamentally racist and just needs to be eliminated as a result. The second stance is a lot more moderate, that police handle many services that would be better handled by other professionals. Things focused on mental health and social work. These people advocate for allocating funds away from police and towards social services instead. The first stance, while emotionally resonating, is easily refuted due to the fact that it is largely based on statistical misrepresentation and logical fallacy. Very sad. Many argue that policing in America began in racism, such as early slave patrols and such. This is an example of a genetic fallacy, in which an idea or concept is considered bad just because it came from something bad. In this case, not only is dismissing modern police as racist due to early policing in error, our modern policing system is also so far removed from the days of slave patrols and racist sheriffs that the two are just not comparable. The primary statistic cited, among others, that supports the allegation that American policing is a racist institution is the disproportionate number of Black Americans killed in police violence. This statistic and others are often misrepresented. And the organization Mapping Police Violence's 2023 Police Violence Report, they assert this fact. However, according to a study published in JAMA Network Open, Black people experience 7.4 times more gun violence than white people. This is due to many factors, the primary ones being the economic disparity between Black and white neighborhoods, and the fact that residential segregation is still a thing in America. There are neighborhoods that are predominantly Black and those that are predominantly white. When one considers that rates of crime and violent crime are many, many times higher in Black neighborhoods than white ones, it becomes a lot easier to look at the data and see that this relatively small percentage difference in the population of Black Americans and the number of those killed by police is honestly even less than what would be expected. The organization also somewhat self-defeatingly states that only 1%, or a total of 10 incidents of police shootings, resulted in an officer being charged with a crime. The intention is clearly to convey a sense of urgency that so few shootings were punished. However, considering the fact that there is little to no metric by which to judge the validity of these shootings, it becomes clear that this statistic is actually a good sign. This statistic more so indicates that most police shootings are found to be justified and not incidents of racism or anything. Excuse me. Section objection to the funding of police is complicated to refute, primarily because the concept of promoting mental health and social services is, by and large, very good. However, seeing the disaster in my example of Seattle should be evidence enough that even considering the vast array of services police provide, taking funding from police and redirecting it elsewhere would still have undeniably dangerous effects. Additionally, many social services the police provide are simply too dangerous for just a social worker to attend to. An article in the American Psychological Association by Ashley Abramson entitled Building Mental Health into Emergency Responses discusses how many police departments are pairing officers with mental health experts to handle certain situations that require their expertise. The reason for this pairing is simple. Most mental health related calls are too dangerous for social workers to handle alone. While the idea of talking down a dangerous person or helping someone in crisis is appealing, the fact is that often mentally unstable individuals are unpredictable, and without an officer present to use force if necessary to protect the social worker and civilians, things can be very dangerous. Even services unrelated to mental health, such as welfare checks on a seemingly abandoned home, can quickly turn too dangerous to risk sending an unequipped social worker or city employee to perform the task. Simply put, the creation of programs to help mentally unstable people and perform other services are fantastic, but these programs will only work in addition to police, not instead of them. While there are some good objections to be raised, statistical evidence and the necessity of police forces more than outweigh these objections in favor of a well-funded and staffed police department. A well-funded police force would make the country safer and allow our lives to be significantly easier, despite objections to the contrary. While it may seem that funding the police is something for the legislature or the city council to decide, there are many things you can do to help the police department. Getting involved with the city or county council and encouraging your representatives to fund police organizations is a good step. Pushing for more police training, as well as more partnership with community programs and mental health experts. Participating in community police events such as citizens' academies and self-defense lessons is another great way to strengthen the police force. Better funding, equipping, and staffing police departments is the best way to ensure rapid emergency response, elevate public safety, and provide the many services that we all enjoy. Looking just an hour or two south down towards Seattle, we can see the impacts of a weak police force. The city simply isn't safe enough to live or do business in. But if we strengthen our police forces, we can ensure that our cities and counties are safe for years to come.
Yeah!
Thank you so much.
Run it back.